Iran's secretive Fordo fuel enrichment plant is buried deep underground and considered virtually unreachable by conventional aerial weapons.
You are looking at a mountain in Iran. Beneath 80 meters of solid rock sits one of the most secret facilities ever built. A place engineered so that no satellite, no spy, and no weapon on Earth could ever see inside it. Iran spent 25 years and billions of dollars making that rock impenetrable. It worked against bombs. It failed against physics. Because someone found a way to look straight through the mountain, to map the tunnels, read the machines, and track the heat, all from the outside, without ever crossing the border.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
This is how the unbreakable shield gave up its secret. The paradox of the perfect bunker. Welcome back to Grand Structures. Here's what you're actually looking at. Near the city of Qom, buried 80 to 90 meters under solid rock and reinforced concrete, sits the Fordo enrichment plant, the most hardened facility in Iran's nuclear program. They didn't hide it with camouflage netting or a coat of desert paint. They hid it with physics. Hundreds of feet of granite that swallows the energy of almost any weapon long before it can reach the chambers below. And for years, the logic held. Bury it deep enough, and it disappears. But there's a crack in that logic, and it's the crack this entire video lives inside. You can hide a facility behind rock. What you cannot hide is the fact that the facility is there, not completely. I'm not going to tell you how yet. I just need you to sit with the shape of the problem. They built the safest room on Earth, and the room still talked. Everything about Fordo was designed to make it invisible, and every one of those choices, it turns out, was a decision they'd come to regret. The question: forget the politics. Strip it all away, and you're left with one clean, almost impossible question. How do you map what's inside a mountain from the outside, without drilling a hole, without crossing the border, without a single person inside ever knowing you're watching? I'll be honest with you, because most videos won't be. The exact toolkit that did this to Iran is classified. Nobody at the top publishes the recipe. But the physics underneath it, that part isn't secret at all. It's published. It's decades old. And it's stranger than the classified version, because anyone who understands it can look at that mountain and watch it come apart. So when the title says a system was built to see beneath mountains, here's the honest version of that promise. It was never one magic machine. It's 4 branches of science running at once, each prying at a different weakness no buried facility can ever fully close. The system is really just this. Someone finally learned to listen to stone. 4 weaknesses. And I promise you, each one is worse than the last. Physics 1. The mountain that talks. Start with the thing about rock nobody thinks about. Rock isn't silent. Rock carries sound. Run a generator underground and it shakes. That shaking pours outward through the stone as a seismic wave. By the time it reaches the surface, it's almost nothing. Millions of times fainter than an earthquake. So faint a single sensor would lose it in the background hum of the planet. So, you don't use one sensor, you use a lot of them. An array of ultra-sensitive instruments planted at known points across the surface above a place you're suspicious of. And here's the trick that turns a scatter of sensors into something that can see. When a source underground sends its waves up, they don't hit every sensor at the same instant. The one closest to the source feels it first. One 50 meters east feels it a heartbeat later. One 100 meters north, later still. Feed those tiny timing differences into a computer, and it works backward to the single point underground where that vibration was born. Not roughly, precisely. It's the same math that lets your phone find itself from satellites. Except here, the signal is a seismic wave crawling through rock instead of a radio wave crossing the sky. And this is where the whole thing flips inside out. The mountain isn't blocking the search. The mountain is doing the search for you. Every machine down there is using the rock around it to broadcast its own coordinates. And it gets worse for them. The harder and more uniform the rock, the cleaner the broadcast comes through. Iran built inside dense granite because granite is savage to bomb. But granite is also a beautiful conductor of seismic energy. The shield and the antenna were the same stone. It doesn't stop at location. A ventilation fan turning at a fixed rate leaves a fingerprint different from a generator, different from a truck, different from footsteps. The person reading that array isn't just finding the room. They're starting to hear what's running inside it. Is the air handling on? How many generators are turning? Is something moving on the roads down there? A working facility is describing its own daily rhythm through the ground, every second, whether it wants to or not. And the moment it goes quiet, that tells you something too. Physics 2, the rock that breathes. If the idea that a mountain can be forced to give up its secrets is doing something to you right now, that cold little feeling at the back of your neck, subscribe before you go any further. I mean it. We're only on weakness number 2, and it gets stranger every time we add one. Here's the second thing they couldn't switch off: heat. Everything running underground makes warmth, and warmth has to go somewhere. Ordinary thermal cameras are useless here. Heat can't climb cleanly through 80 meters of rock. It smears away to nothing before it reaches the surface. So you don't look for the heat. You look for what heat quietly does to the ground above it. The tool is synthetic aperture radar, flown on satellites. The satellite fires radar pulses at the surface and times the reflections to a precision that sounds invented. Take 2 radar images of the exact same patch of ground, weeks or months apart, and a computer can spot a change in the surface height smaller than a millimeter. Geologists use this same trick to watch volcanoes swell and fault lines creep. Now, pointed at the buried facility. Heat from below crawls upward and warms the rock above by a few fractions of a degree. Warm rock expands by fractions of a millimeter, invisible to any eye, any camera, but not invisible to the radar. A slow, consistent bulge above an operating facility, a swelling the rest of the mountain doesn't share, rises out of the data like a thumbprint pressed into the ground. And that gives you something even better than a location. It gives you a heartbeat. A running facility makes heat, and the ground lifts. A dormant one cools, and the ground settles back. Track that rising and falling over time, and you can tell whether a place is working itself to the bone or has gone cold and still, no matter what anyone at a podium says about it. Which is exactly why the next weakness is the one that should really unsettle you. Because sound and heat both need the facility to be alive. The third one doesn't care if anyone's home. Physics 3, the weight of emptiness. This is the one I think about at night, because empty space weighs less than rock, and that difference, tiny as it is, can be measured from the surface. Gravity isn't perfectly even across the Earth. It shifts very slightly with the density of whatever sits beneath the point where you're standing. Solid granite is dense. It pulls a hair harder. A hollow tunnel is not dense at all. So a sensor sitting directly over a void, a chamber where there should be stone, and instead there's just air, feels a fraction less pull than one sitting over unbroken rock. For almost all of history, that difference was too small to trust. The signal drowned in noise. What broke the game open is a new kind of instrument, quantum gravimeters. Forget a weight on a spring. These drop clouds of laser-cooled atoms in a vacuum and measure, with almost unbelievable precision, exactly how fast they fall. Because the speed of that fall is bent by the gravity of everything beneath them. In lab and field demonstrations, they're sensitive enough to reveal buried voids and tunnels from the surface above. Flying that over hostile ground is at the very edge of what anyone can do, and the details of any real operation stay locked away. But the physics is not up for debate. Here's why this one is different from everything before it. It needs nothing from the facility. No vibration, no heat, no signal at all. Picture it. The whole place powered all the way down. Generators dead, air handling stopped, not one person moving in the dark. Total silence, total stillness. They've done everything right. They've turned off the world. And the void underneath still weighs less than the rock around it. You can hold your breath. You cannot make the emptiness heavier. That's a law of physics, and you can't switch a law of physics off to hide from an inspection. Sit with what that actually means. You can weigh a mountain from the outside and find the precise spots where it weighs a little too little, and everywhere the number comes up short, something has been carved out of the stone. Now, line the 3 up. Sound tells you what's running, radar tells you where the heat lives and whether the place is awake. Gravity hands you the raw shape of every hollow, awake, or dead. 3 separate laws of nature, and the facility can't obey any of them quietly. But there's a 4th, and the 4th is the one they could never, ever design away. Physics 4, the breath it cannot hold. Because people need air, machines need cooling. Air has to come in, and air has to go out. And wherever air moves, it carries temperature with it. The exhaust from an underground facility runs warmer than the surface around it. That's the whole job of the ventilation system, pulling in cool air and pushing the facility's heat out. And those exhaust points have to break the surface somewhere. They have no choice. There is no version of this where they don't. High-resolution infrared sensors on satellites can pick out very small temperature differences on the ground from orbit. A vent breathing air a few degrees warmer than the rock beside it isn't a subtle little clue. It's a flare fired straight into the sky. And you can't leave the vents off the blueprint to stay hidden. Take them away, and everyone underground suffocates. Keep them, and the facility signs its own address for any infrared satellite passing overhead. Iran knew this and tried to fight it, tucking exhausts into rock crevices, burying them under debris, dressing them up as natural features. That softens the signal. It does not erase it. A crevice with warm air pouring out of it doesn't behave thermally like a natural one. The way the heat bleeds across the rock around a disguised vent leaves a pattern of its own, one that careful eyes learn to recognize. And pair that with the seismic hum of the ventilation fans themselves. Those fans spin at a specific rate an array can hear. And the exact system keeping everyone alive down there is the same one telling you where they are, how big the place is, and whether it's running right now. Every method so far has pried at one weakness on its own. Now, watch what happens when you stop using them one at a time, and switch all 4 on at once. 4 windows, 1 picture. One at a time, each of these has a hole in it. Seismic needs the facility to be running. Radar needs patience. Weeks of repeat images to catch the ground moving. Gravity needs sensors carried in close, which over a defended border is brutally hard. Infrared only works while the ventilation is breathing. Any one of them, alone, can be dodged or missed. So, you don't run them one at a time. Turn all 4 on together and the holes close, because the blind spot of one is the specialty of another. Seismic maps what's operating, radar maps where the heat is and which sections are alive. Gravity maps the raw architecture, every tunnel, every chamber, every void, powered or dead. Infrared hunts the vents, the one connection the mountain can't seal. Cross-reference 4 independent readings of the same mountain, and the picture doesn't just sharpen, it resolves, down toward individual rooms. Not despite the rock, through it. The mountain's own physics turned against the facility the mountain was supposed to protect. For years, this race ran in total silence, and the world only saw the last few seconds of it. Then, over 1 week in June 2025, we all watched what happens when someone has been reading the mountain the entire time. June 2025. On June 13th, a campaign opened against Iran's nuclear sites, surface targets, power, support systems, above-ground facilities across the program, hit. But Fordo, 80 to 90 meters down, sat below the reach of those first strikes. Getting to it needed something heavier. On June 21st into the 22nd came Operation Midnight Hammer, B-2 stealth bombers carrying the 30,000-pound GBU-57, the massive ordnance penetrator, the one weapon on Earth built for exactly this problem. And here's the detail that pulls this whole story tight into a knot. Somewhere, an analyst sat at a screen, pulling up the satellite imagery of Fordo, frame by frame after the strikes, and watched the impact points resolve out of the pixels, not scattered across the mountain, clustered right over the ventilation shafts. The people who read that imagery saw exactly what you now understand. The bombs had gone in over the vents. The one thing the mountain could never seal, the breath it couldn't hold, was the seam the entire attack was aimed at. I have to be straight about the rest. How much of Fordo actually survived is still fought over. Iran says one thing, the IAEA says another, and various intelligence assessments say something different again, and honest experts are still arguing about it. But that argument sits downstream of the point of this video. Before anyone could ask whether a bomb could reach that facility, a harder question had to be answered first. Could it even be found? Could its shape be mapped, its rhythm watched, its weak points pinpointed from the outside without Iran ever knowing? Everything we just walked through is why the answer was yes. You do not aim a 30,000-pound bomb at a mountain and hope. You have to know, to within a few meters, where the rooms are, and which point on a vast slope of rock leads down to the one that matters. That knowledge didn't come from luck. It came from years of listening to the ground. You cannot hide behind physics. Iran spent billions putting its most important work underground to hide it. The work went underground. The knowledge of it didn't stay hidden. Because the mountain refused to keep the secret. You can hide behind a rock, but rock carries sound. Rock swells when it's warm and settles when it's cold. Rock has weight that empty tunnels do not. Rock lets warm air escape wherever a vent breaks the surface. Every property that made Fordo feel untouchable is a property that leaks. The fortress they chose as a shield was, at the very same moment and against its will, the most detailed informant they ever had, describing itself, non-stop, to instruments that never touched Iranian soil. And here's why this changes everything, far past one mountain in Iran. For 50 years, the answer to a powerful enemy was simple: dig deeper. Put your most important secret under so much rock that no bomb and no eye could ever reach it. That whole strategy rested on one assumption. That depth means invisibility. The physics in this video quietly takes that assumption apart. If a mountain can be read from the outside, its hollows weighed, its heat traced, its machines heard, its breath followed up to the surface, then depth stops being a hiding place and becomes, at best, a delay. Every buried command center, every hardened silo, every underground lab on the planet inherits that problem tonight. The race was never really about who could dig deeper. It's about who can listen better. That's the part to sit with. A mountain is not a wall. A mountain is a medium. It carries sound, it carries heat, it carries the unmistakable signature of emptiness, and it breathes through vents it cannot close. Coming in, Part 2. Finding the bunker and mapping what's inside it. That's only half the problem. The other half is uglier. How do you actually destroy something 80 meters under solid rock with a weapon dropped out of the sky? In Part 2, we take the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator apart in full engineering detail. How it survives impact, how it drives down through rock and concrete, how it knows the exact instant to detonate deep underground, and why building the unbombable bunker and building the bomb that beats it have been locked in a 30-year arms race with no finish line. But before you go, here's what I actually want to know. If depth isn't a hiding place anymore, if a mountain can be made to give up everything it's holding, is there anywhere left on Earth a secret can genuinely stay buried? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Subscribe to Grand Structures so Part 2 lands in front of you the second it drops. And I'll see you there.